Greetings, Gilliam the Rogue here, once again with another Elder Scrolls Online Let's Talk segment. As we have just concluded Assault, we will now begin with the support skill line from the Alliance War skill tree in the Elder Scrolls Online. Again, this will acquire experience by gaining Alliance rank or Alliance points. You need Alliance points, which boosts your rank, which boosts your support/assault. They'll both accelerate at the same exact pace. So if you are Assault 10, you're also going to be Support 10. If you're Support 2, you're going to be Assault 2, and so on. So I already explained how to do that. Really straightforward. Just doing PvP activities in Cyrodiil will get you AP. So since that's out of the way, we'll look at our active abilities. And our first active ability is called Siege Shield. Siege Shield isn't going to do any damage, it's not going to have any scaling, but it will cost max magicka to cast, and it's going to cost a goddamn lot at that. We look at here, almost 10,000 magicka. This is actually the highest magicka cost in the game, so right off the bat we have one use for it. Even if we're not using it for its intended use, there's a fight in the game called the Serpent. He's a boss in the Trial Sanctum Ophidia, and there's a mechanic he does where he places magicka totems which place magicka bombs on players, that if they do not drain their magicka fast enough, they will explode, and for every 1 point of magicka, it will turn into damage. So if you're a magicka build and you have more than 10,000 magicka while this explodes, you're gonna die, no matter what. So you need to drain your magicka as soon as you can, and Siege Shield is the best way to do that. Now, do you have to use Siege Shield? No, not by any means. There are tons of other skills you can use to drain, and Siege Shield is going to have a really crazy particle effect, so if you have 8 people spamming it, you're going to have some latency issues on top of everything else. But again, it is there. It will prevent you from dying if you just spam cast this in there. So it already has a use in PvE, even if it's not for what its intended use is. But what it's going to do is it's going to summon a bubble in a 10 meters AoE radius. It's going to last 20 seconds. And it's going to give us a protective spear that reduces the damage from siege weaponry by 35%. Really, really straightforward. If we look here, I literally can't even cast the skill right now because I don't have enough max magicka. So let's pump up my magicka. So this is without any cost reductions. Again, almost 10k. All we do is we pop it up. It comes from our targeted position. This will not be a reticle. And we just see this, any siegery that lands within this area is going to have its damage reduced by a flat 35%. So in Cyrodiil, this is going to be really helpful if we're just getting bombarded with siege. Usually larger groups will make use of it when fighting at a keep or at a tower or something. Like if you're being sieged or you're sieging an enemy and you want to protect your own, pop up Siege Shield. The base morph will not apply to our siege weaponry, so if we're getting counter sieged, we'll take less damage. It'll make sure we don't die when we're trying to siege, but it's not going to protect our siege. Now we'll look at our morphs though. And our first morph is called Siege Weapon Shield, and what that's going to do is it's going to reduce the damage of enemy siege against our and our allies' siege weapons. So this means if I place down a trebuchet and then someone starts using like a fire pot treb at me, my siege is going to take 75% less damage from their siege, and I'll still take the 35% less damage. So this is really, really helpful to prevent counter sieging. So if you have your group lined up and they're all launching rocks at the enemy, keep to break down that wall, and then you see the enemy raise up some cold fire trebs to try and destroy your siege, place down a siege weapon shield. It's going to reduce the damage by a staggering amount, allowing you to continue the offense and just break down that wall and make sure you can push into the attack. So really, really great more for PvP if we're doing the coordinated AVA, Alliance versus Alliance, taking keeps, taking resources, and so on. Our other morph is called Propelling Shield, and this is going to be our PvE morph, and this is another time where we're going to gain some advantages from this skill because it can be used in niche fights. And what it's going to do is it's going to increase the range of abilities within a range of 20 meters by an additional 4. So if my ability already has 20 meters or more range that it can be casted by, it will gain an additional 4 meters. I'm going to take this morph, and we see that that scales up to 7 meters. So let's say I have a skill that can be casted 28 meters away, pretty much any ranged ability in this game. That 28 will get an additional 7, and it will now become 35 meters. So really, really, really nice for increasing the range. The best place to use Propelling Shield in PvE that I can give an example of is going to be the twins of Maw of Lorkhaj. Usually you can have one person place this at the center of their room, so when the bosses go to the split sides and both tanks need to range taunt the opposite, they can just stand in Propelling Shield, and it's going to make them be able to taunt it from even farther away, making sure that they don't go on their allies and proc Infernal Implosion. So again, another way we can use it in PvE, very helpful. There are other places you can use it too. And then in PvP, if you're trying to attack enemies from inside a keep or outside, you can place this down and your archers can start pelting away. That 35 meters range of snipe, that's also further increased by reach, by even further, is going to get even more range. Like crazy far away you can use snipe in Cyrodiil, especially if you have Propelling Shield. So a great way to use that tool. And it's still going to have that reduces damage taken from you and your allies by 35% damage, or by 35% of siege weapon damage. So really, really great skill. Propelling Shield will also reduce the cost. If we see here, instead of costing almost 10k, it's almost going to cost 8,500. So that's also going to be a nice thing. So if you're in Sanctum Ophidia and you're trying to drain your magicka, take Propelling Shield, because 9 times out of 10, Propelling Shield's cost is going to be so high that you won't be able to spam cast it, because you're going to have like 8k magic or 6k magic, and it's going to cost 7k to cast, so you're not going to be able to drain everything. So Propelling Shield is going to lower that by a little bit, making sure you can ensure to drain yourself. Our next ability is called Purge. Again, it's going to have a filthy high magicka cost. What it's going to do, it's not going to scale with anything because it works by removing negative effects from our allies. Again, they have to be in our group. It can't be just any ally walking around being a potato. You have to be grouped up. But any ally, up to 6 allies in an 18-meter radius, will have 2 negative effects of their damage over times or debuffs removed for them, and then making any debuff past those 2 that's currently on the user reduce their duration by 50% for 6 seconds. So like, let's say I have 3 dots on me and they all last 10 seconds. 2 of them will go away, and then 1 of them will now last 5 seconds. So really straightforward. Helps take off some pressure from damage over times, especially helpful with removing major defile so you can heal your allies more. Getting off poisons, like cost increase poisons. So very, very helpful tool. And furthermore, again, we have another option to run this in PvE. In PvE, there are tons of really, really dangerous damage over time effects. Again, the Maw of Lorkhaj, the twins, the light group and the light ads have something called Reflective Light. They place it on a player and it does really, really high damage. Your job as a healer, both healers or one, is to just spam the fuck out of Purge whenever that happens to really help take off the load of the really high damage there and help your allies not have to shield, not have to heal, and just keep the offense. So really, really great skill in both PvE and in PvP. It also has no internal cooldown, meaning you can just infinitely remove debuffs. I would like to see this changed. I believe that there should be a 6-second or higher ICD on purges to make the user think twice before they go ahead and remove negative effects. But we've already talked about that in previous videos. And now we'll look at our morphs. Our first morph is called Efficient Purge. It just reduces that really high magicka cost by a noticeable amount. Over 2,000. Like it really, really makes it cheaper. This is going to be our go-to morph for the most part as a healer. in PvE, because like most of the time allies aren't going to have more than 2 debuffs on them. So Efficient Purge is just going to be super, super helpful, going to help load off or take off that really high magicka cost, helping our sustain in the long run. Our other morph is called Cleanse, and what that is anytime a negative effect is removed, they are healed for 15% of their max health. This is kind of nice, but at the same time, it's not as much. Even though it works with percent healing, it will get hit by Battle Spirit and Cyrodiil, but at the same time, you gain a little bit of extra health from Battle Spirit, so it's kind of equalized. But usually, I mean, Efficient Purge is just going to really, really make this skill cost way less. So both PvE and in PvP, 9 times out of 10, if we are going to run this skill at all, we're going to take Efficient Purge. But if we're in a really big group and we're just going to be protected by the sea of bodies around us, and we can just devote all of our stats into magicka regen and cost reduction, then Cleanse is going to be a really, really good tool. Our next ability is called Guard, and it's not going to scale with anything. It's not going to deal any damage, but it will cost stamina to cast. And what it works, or how it works, is it is a casted targeted ability. So you need an ally. They have to be in a group, and they can move up to 15 meters away from you after you cast this on them. But after you cast this on them, you bind yourself to them, and again, if they can walk up to 15 meters away without it breaking, but if they go farther than 15 meters away, then the link will break and you'll have to recast it on someone. But what it is while that bond persists, that ally takes 30% less damage, and that damage is then taken and converted to you, which will be affected by your mitigation. So I don't take the same amount of damage my ally would. So this is going to be a very, very helpful tool in Cyrodiil and in PvE if we are a tank build, because it's going to help our allies just be super, super tanky. And furthermore, in PvE, if you're a main tank, you can have your off tank run guard on you. So if you're tanking Rakata and he's about to do gun, you're about to take a hell of a lot of damage. Your off tank can pop guard on you, and you will take 30% less damage, allowing you to survive. Same with the Warrior's Channeled Strikes. Make sure a player, it doesn't even have to be a tank, to run guard. Put it on the main tank so he doesn't get fucked up. That 30% damage reduction will go a long way. Furthermore, a tank can also place guard on a player, making it so they have a less chance to die. So if you're running with a stand build and he's hella squishy, put guard on him. It's going to be really, really, really strong. Now we'll look at our morphs. And our first morph is called Mystic Guard. And what that's going to do is you and your bonded ally, while this is active, will receive Minor Vitality, increasing your healing received by 8%. Really, really straightforward. I don't really like this morph. I don't think Minor Vitality is really worth it in terms of what this skill does. I mean, Guard is a really, really great skill. Don't get me wrong. Like, even without Minor Vitality, it's fucking great. I love it. But in terms of a morph option, 8% increased healing received by you and your ally, I just don't like it that much. And that's because our other morph, which is called Stalwart Guard, is going to make it so you and your bonded ally gain Minor Force, increasing your critical strike damage by 10%. In 1 Tamriel and prior, this was 12%. It did get nerfed in Homestead, that's why it's 10%, but it's still an extremely important skill to run in PvE. It's still going to increase damage in PvP. It's going to help remove some of the impen stat from players. Every 100 points of impen equals 1% damage mitigation, so this removes 1,000 impen from someone. So really, really great in both PvP and in PvE, because more crit hit damage means more DPS. So if you're a tank, run Stalwart Guard in PvE if you have room for it. It does need to be double barred, however, because it is a toggle. You can't cast it on yourself, you'll need an ally, but if you have it on one bar and swap to another, the beam will dissipate. So that should be noted. Our last skill is called Revealing Flare. This isn't going to deal any damage in its base form, so it's not going to scale with anything. It has an extremely low magicka cost. We look at, it has about a 2k, and that's with no cost reduction whatsoever. I'm naked, I have no CP, etc. So not going to have a very high cost. It's going to have a 10 meter AoE radius, and it's going to be casted up to 30 meters away. So we see I just pull up a reticle, and then I cast it, and then shoots this little blue orb, and once it lands, it does its intended effect. And what that is any enemy it hits, if they are stealthed or invisible, they will be revealed. Furthermore, if they are exposed by this, they will gain a 50% movement speed reduction for 3 seconds, and they also cannot return to stealth or invisibility for the next 3 seconds. So if you're fighting a pesky Nightblade, or someone or a group of players using invisibility potions or trying to crouch around, use Revealing Flare. It will remove them from stealth. It will prevent them from doing stealth damage, so they won't get the crit, they won't get the stun, they won't get the bonus damage, and they'll be exposed for the next 3 seconds. So really helpful in taking care of gank builds or large groups that are trying to stealth bomb you, and so on. Now we'll look at our morphs, and our first morph is called Lingering Flare. What it does is it makes it so the flare lingers after you cast it. So you cast it on the ground, after it lands, it will persist for 5 additional seconds, meaning if an enemy walks in that targeted area for 5 seconds, or within that 5 seconds, they will be afflicted with the exposed. They'll have the movement speed reduction, they can't re-enter stealth or invisibility, and so on. So you can place this in chokeholds and just make it so enemies can't get stealth. So if you're in Imperial's sewers and you're grinding and you're really worried about getting ganked because you have 100,000 Telvar, use Lingering Flare, have it on your bar, put it in hallways so you know that a Nightblade can't sneak past you and just get the gank on you. So really great tool in helping alleviate the pressure of gank builds. Our other morph is called Scorching Flare, and this is going to have a damage component, and since it does, it's going to make it scale with our max magicka and spell damage, as well as spell critical and spell penetration, because it's going to deal flame damage. At that, it's going to do a lot of flame damage. But this is only if it removes an enemy. So if you just cast it, like if I show here, if I just cast this, it's not going to deal damage. It has to reveal an enemy to deal the damage. So this is not going to be a viable dot. And if it was, it would be way too OP, because if I was in gear, I could get this tooltip easily up to 40,000 damage. Easily. Scorching Flare has an extremely high coefficient for how it scales. We see 4,200 flame damage, and I have 15k magicka and 0 spell damage. That is how strong this skill is. I have 0 CP. Like, let's look how much it would be if I pumped up all of my Elemental Expert and Elfborn. 6288. Now let's take stuff out of Elfborn, and let's put it into Thaumaturge, because guess what? Hey, that skill, that's a dot. That's now 7545, and I'm still naked. And it's over 3 seconds. Like, this is the strongest damage over time in the game. Nothing comes close to this. But again, you have to remove an enemy from stealth. So, if you hit that Nightblade with this skill, they are going to burn, baby, burn. Tons and tons of damage. The only way they're going to really live is if they cleanse it or if they keep spamming Cloak. But hey, guess what? They can't spam Cloak, because for the next 3 seconds, they can't enter stealth or invisibility. So really, really great tool at helping remove Nightblades from the table. Now at the same time, this completely removes the only competitive aspect of the Nightblade in Cyrodiil, which is stealth. If a Nightblade isn't ganking you, he's gonna be fucking useless. So, Scorching Flare is really, really overbearing, and it's hilarious that so few people run it. It completely removes one of the most toxic builds from Cyrodiil. All you have to do is hit people with it. It's super, super easy. I don't know why more people don't use this, but at the same time, I really wish they would, because then ZeniMax would see, damn, the only thing Stam Nightblades are good at in PvP right now is stealth. And they can't even do that because Radiant Magelight and Scorching Flare exist. So maybe we should buff them or rework stealth so it's not toxic but also rewarding to use. So honestly, like, Scorching Flare is amazing, but it's also way too amazing because it makes one class's purpose useless, just completely negligible. So yeah, Scorching Flare, very, very great tool, helping remove Nightblades, helping remove invisible players. So you're in Imperial City, farming that Telvar, slot Scorching Flare, even if you're a Stam build. It's going to do lots of damage. It's going to make sure you're safe. It doesn't cost much. It can be used up to 30 meters away. It has a 10 meters radius. I mean, there's literally no reason not to use this skill if you're in Cyrodiil or have someone in your group using this skill in terms of like what it does. If your group keeps getting killed by Nightblades, just put this on. It's as easy as that. But now we'll look at our ultimate, and that is Barrier. And Barrier is going to scale with our maximum stats. So again, like any ultimate, it will, and it's going to give us a damage shield. It's going to cost 200 ultimate, it's going to last 30 seconds, and it's going to apply to any allied groupmate. Again, they need to be in our group, up to 12 meters AoE radius. And it's just going to give them a damage shield. Again, it's going to scale with whatever stats, so weapon damage and stamina, or spell damage and max magicka. So really straightforward. It will also scale with the Bastion in the champion point system, as it is a damage shield. Great way to help take off damage, because furthermore you cannot crit damage shield, so in PvP this is going to really help take off a lot of burst damage, but at the same time shields will take true damage. There are some skills that will not make them take true damage. I will not name them because that is not intended. It is a plague that is in Cyrodiil right now. I'd really like to see those abilities get fixed, because there's no reason that they should be applying mitigation to shields. I mean, that is the core mechanic of a shield. You can't crit it, but that's because it takes full damage. But yeah, not that good. It's only going to have a 6-person target cap, meaning Trials can't effectively use Barrier anymore because there are 12 people. I don't like that change, but at the same time, it really made it so, like before it had like a 24-person target cap or something crazy, so large groups would just pop Barrier and everyone would be safe while it was active. Now, multiple people need to run it. It only hits 6, but it really hurt PvE because Barrier was a good tool for groups learning mechanics and stuff, like newer groups who wanted to do a trial but just couldn't stand a lot of the damage because their DPS wasn't high enough to burn, or they weren't used to mechanics yet. But it's really, really weak in PvE, and it's okay in PvP. Now we'll look at our morphs. Our first morph is called Reviving Barrier, and what that's going to do is it's going to have a heal component while our allies are shielded. Now, if the shield breaks, this heal will go away, but it heals allies for 6-6-1-5 over 30 seconds. This will obviously scale up based on our again, max magicka or spell damage, or max stamina and weapon damage. So pretty straightforward. It'll also use the Elfborn and the champion point, or Blessed in the champion point systems. If our max stam is higher, it'll use precise strikes, and if our max magicka is higher, it will use Elfborn. I don't like this morph just because if the damage shield breaks, the heal goes away, and the heal is not that strong. Our other morph, on the other hand, is called Replenishing Barrier, which makes it so anytime the shield breaks on an ally, you, the caster, gain 6 ultimate and 270 magicka. This means if all 6 shields break, you gain 36 ultimate and 6 times 270. Now we're going to take this morph and we're going to see that magicka will scale up further based on the rank. The ultimate will not. So this helps take away some of that really high cost, because no matter what, the shield will break. Like, even if it dissipates from the duration, we're going to get the ultimate. So this is just going to make it so we're going to get a little bit ultimate return in back, and then it also help our magicka sustain. So this is my suggested morph if you're going to be using this skill at all. However, again, this skill kind of in a bad spot because it has a 6-person target cap instead of 12. Still, you can use it if you so choose. It can help, but I prefer stuff like Nova or Negate. Now we'll look at our passive abilities. And our first passive ability is called Magicka Aid, and that makes it so anytime we have a support's ability slotted, we're going to gain 10% recovery. As we see here, since I have every support skill slotted, I'm gaining 50% additional magicka recovery. So my magicka recovery is 771 with this. I take these all off, and it drops to 514. So pretty strong. It was giving me more than 200 regen. If my base regen was even higher because of drink, CP, gear, then this would be a very efficient stat. It's also something that healers and tanks can use. If you're using aggressive Warhorn on one bar, you can put barrier on the other bar and just gain some magicka recovery. So really nice way to make use out of this passive in both PvE and in PvP if you're only going to be using aggressive Warhorn. Our next passive is called Combat Medic, and that's going to make it so anytime we're near a keep, we're going to increase our healing done by 20%. Again, I don't remember the threshold for how close or how far away you can be to a keep before you gain this. I'm pretty sure it's identical to Reach's bonus. Again, pretty much if it's in render distance, you're probably going to have this. A very, very strong stat. It works for allied or enemy keeps regardless. But at the same time, it's also going to be a very, very toxic skill in my opinion because of the ease of stacking healing done in this game. There's no real reason why someone needs 20% increased healing done when heavy armor gives 8%, major mending gives 25%, minor mending is 8%, minor vitality is 30 or 40%, minor vitality is 8%. So like there's so much percent healing in this game that combat medic should not exist, and 20% at that. That's almost as strong as a major buff. Like there's no real reason for it to exist. It's just a very, very overly powerful passive. And then our last passive is called Battle Resurrection, and what that's going to do is it reduces the time it takes you to resurrect another player by 30% while you are in a PvP area. So if you're in Imperial City Sewers, or in Cyrodiil, anytime you res an ally with a soul gem, that channel will be 30% faster. Really straightforward, helps get up your team faster, and it will stack. However, it will be multiplicative, so it'll be 30% of whatever the time is. So if we're a Templar, it'll be 30% of whatever that bonus is. Really straightforward, very helpful for healers and DPS alike. Really can actually, you can res your group from a wipe and just get them all back up and get a push if you're like a Nightblade or something, and you can stealth around. But at the same time, again, this is another tool that larger groups that are just filled with bodies are going to be able to abuse, because if you have 20 people and I'm a 6-man group, it's going to be really hard if you have 2 Nightblades who are split up just rezzing people because they have the bodies and the distractions to do so. So I'd like to see Battle Resurrection see a reduction based on your group size. So if you are grouped with like more than 12 players, maybe reduce the efficiency, or if you're near an X amount of allied players, have it reduced or something because just as it stands, it's just another tool that larger groups can really abuse and makes it very difficult to fight them. But that is it for the support video. I hope you guys have learned something. Even some of these skills are pretty handy in PvE, not even exclusive to PvP, so really nice. But yeah, again, hopefully you've learned something, but I will see you all next time. If you've liked the content in this video, consider pledging at my Patreon. The community's interest and support keep me inspired and drive me to continue improving and giving back. Thanks to all my patrons who've already shown their dedication. I truly appreciate it. If you have feedback, drop a comment, give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down, or subscribe to the channel. Other than that, I will see you guys next time.